Hi everyone, yes, welcome to an amazing door out. Yes, an amazing day outdoors. Door out, yeah, outside the door. What our relationship took this month. And an amazing welcome to everyone who always listens to our advice and our opinions. And what all that has happened during this season, all the craziness that our generation finds themselves at, the craziness that seems like someone questions someone else's decision about being fine in our generation, right? About the choices that we make. We have discussed before our opportunity of choice in our seasons. And with our opportunity of choice, with the choices that we make in our generation, we are sometimes having to be fine. We're deciding for you what where you are at in the choices that you make regarding yourself in this season. And therefore, I want to not today have us be difficult on ourselves, right? So when we have our relationship discussions and when we have our people of color discussions and are leading to this generation discussions, we want people to be firm on what is happening in our generation. And we want people to be firm on who are managing those processes in our generation. And while they are managing the processes, for us that are having to decide whether we're gonna be in that we are going to abuse someone else or corrupt someone else, or whether we are going to be in our generation's mindsets of going on with where we our generation are at in our seasons. In that reminder that seasons are amazing, seasons are different, right? And season requires us to respond differently with where we are at and with where we find ourselves at. And with all that we have been educated about us being human beings on earth. And with all the education, you can sometimes decide to rather not be in the corrupt and abuse of this world, or to rather not abuse the amazingness of our generation, and to then rather allow yourself to educate that is you in your season, right? That is you making that is season that you are not going to find yourself now challenged by the challenges that other people can just make a decision and get themselves out of those challenges sometimes, and other people finding themselves in that they want to blame someone else while they are somewhere where they can make a decision that someone else would be fine and protected at. It is that everyone says that we all have an opportunity to protect one another, and we are in a protective season of our generation. We are in the birthness of our generation. We are in that it is season to make is not so difficult. That a discussion to have with someone else is not so challenging, right? That an opportunity for someone else to listen to you is not so difficult. It is whether our generation I want to aggress one another, or whether our generation wants to be fine with where they're at in our generation, right? It is that I can't argue a lot with someone that tells me someone else wants to rule the world. I always say that no one can rule the world. No one person can rule the world. No one person can make a decision to rule the world. We are one house, we are one family in this generation, and it is the protective environment that we create with the decisions and the choices that we make that has us be fine for ourselves. It is that no one agrees with with the abuse that is happening in the world. No, no one wants the abuse to happen in the world. But what we can do is we can educate everyone to get out of the abuse and to be fine with deciding that there is gonna be non-abusive to them or to others, right? Everyone have to make a choice that when they step out of that has been abusive in their countries, then how is who gonna react in that? The birthness of that protective environment for everyone, right? That was non-negotiable. The auntie said that this morning on television that Mama Universe took a son in a storm, she said, and Mama Universe only gave her one son hanging in a tree. And then she said, when the storm came, she said, Mama Universe, God only gave me this one child back, and my other children went, or my other child went away in the storm, she said. And God said, but I leave you one, and I leave him hanging on the tree. And I remember South Africa those years when I was young, had that guys were hanging in the trees, right? Parents came from work and they were hanging in the trees, and they were committing suicide. And I was very young those days, so we're not gonna worry about the video or the camera today, but we're gonna listen to what I'm saying. And those guys were really hanging and committing suicides because of so many other reasons and so many other discussions that they sometimes don't talk about. And when some of those parents got home, the guys were hanging in the trees, and it was all over our community. I remember it was probably in the year 2002, right? And I remember 2002, 2001, and I remember coming home, and we were young and we were in secondary school, and everywhere we listened to, there was a story of someone that committed suicide and that hanged themselves in a tree. And the mama said this morning on television that God left her with one that is hanging in a tree, and she can't complain about it because the storm came, the storm took all the others, and God said, I give you this one, and he's hanging in the tree about it. And I remember that during this season, we had a lot that we say that God says that we can protect ourselves. It is not that we were not educated to decide for ourselves. It is not that we say that people in Ukraine now need to hang in a tree and wait for God to now respond to say that this is what I give you. No, it is that we say that we were educated as human beings. My mama Anna always used to say that never was she had an education, but she thank God that her children has got an education to decide right from wrong. That she appreciates and thank God that she can decide to pray for children, and that even is an education in our household sometimes. And I remember having to learn that in our community, all the discussions and corruptions that relates to our family names, and then I can remind myself that a lot was hanging on the tree, but my mama said that I didn't have an education, but I had that opportunity of choice to decide right from wrong. And know that today we can argue the case very fair, and we can say that what is then if we don't educate this now in our generation. Then Ribea Elise tells you that the way that we educate sometimes can even be a protective environment for our children. And that we know what? We do not have to educate a generation that this is this and this is that. And no, we are not speaking today about Putin who's standing there, because we all have learned that the birth season he was even a child in the mama's womb, and today he's an elder that even wants to educate and even finds himself challenged because the generation has abused his name. He's been involved in a lot of y'all's discussions. And when circumstances is like that in Russia, Ukraine, where the two children look like brothers today, where the countries look like brother countries, where they were born from the womb of brother countries, and the world looks upon it and the world decides to still side one side or the other side concerning the matter, then the only thing you can do on those days is give your opinion and listen to what is happening concerning the birthness and the protective environment that is for both brothers in the situation. When the world was against Putin, maybe someone else thought that they were going to strike Russia, and Putin had to make a firm choice. And in this season, who has to sometimes decide to listen to what does Mama Universe say? What does God say concerning the birthness of our generation? It is not that the protective environment is not there. It is that the protective environment is for both in the season that the world has planned against someone, that the world has learned that someone is in business in this world, and someone else wanted to oppress the guy, and the guy had to stand up for himself. And the Ukrainian said, but we sit today with our Malvina glasses on, and we sit today with Ribea's hairstyle on this television to say that we do not know whose side we are on in the season, but a protective environment is what is required in our generation. And the mama sits firmly on television with her glasses on, and she says that I look on Ribea's storyline, the way Malvina looked, and the way the world is talking today about Malvina that looked into Ribea Elise's storyline. And Ribea Elise that is firm on a protective environment. And the mama don't say it with words, no. Mama Universe educated us that when you post how you fashion yourself, humanity has got to learn to listen to that, and has got to learn to even find answer and protection in that. And today our advice is that the protective environment required is that the world is complete with stories about it, complete with how we are disagreeing and agreeing with where we are finding ourselves at as humanity. And the world is even educating us, even from their challenges today, countries are educating us that while our seasons differs, it is that the loudness, that how you listen to is sometimes the loud response that you make in a generation. And therefore, while our generation finds themselves in that, and that we are not gonna disregard our mama's wombs, no, but we are gonna say that when I can react to that is protective for someone else, then I am gonna react to that is protective for someone else. And know my own sister is very fond on her Malvina friendship in her Mbabani education, and I have never been in the education rooms, and I have never listened to them, because all these years no one is dumb in this world. When people find themselves in corruption, you would want to not have something to do with this. And I was a little girl, and my sister decided different. My sister decided that she's gonna stay in the instruction and education of that house. And today I cannot argue with her, because me and my sister has never been in disagreement with us, but our opinions is important, and we have been educated that this universe requires us to listen intently to what we are educated, and to never disregard the voice of education, no matter who is saying what in our generation. It is that we make the protective firm decision upon that, and that we are required to react to that. That is that birthright that every one of us has on this earth. And therefore today we want to have our relationship talk, that is the wine, right? The vineyard, the how you listen into that is the tastiness of your season. But when we look upon a generation, we look upon people that are sometimes celebrating in one part of our generation, and people that sometimes find themselves challenged in another part of our generation. We look upon a generation, we look upon countries that colors differently in our season. We look upon winters, we look upon seasons that now has allowed us to say that, you know what, the wind is there, and it's winter in New Zealand, but it feels like it's the hottest summer season. It feels like there's no winter sign in this June month in Auckland, New Zealand, and the weather is changing, and the seasons for our generation is changing. And it is that many countries wants to say, that they are firm to say that our opinions concerning one another and concerning the choices we are making are also changing the way the seasons are changing for a generation. When the seasons change, we have to allow ourselves to be fine with that is the change of seasons. We have to allow ourselves to be fine with that is the seasons are gonna differ. That is, years ago when I was celebrating seasons at New Orleansville Primary School, I was celebrating exactly that. That is the excitement of listening to my seasons. When seasons changed, I was excited to run out, to look at the weather, to appreciate everything concerning the different season, to look earnestly on when the season are gonna change, right? To look earnestly on when the sun is gonna come forth, and when the spring is gonna blossom in our schoolyard, and when we're gonna have the warmy days outside, and when we're gonna have the jolly days outside, and then the education of the winters in the classroom. It is that we do not disregard our amazingness of the universe. We do not disregard our warmthness. We do not disregard where we find ourselves at with the education. I can say that these years we are distracted with so much that you don't even sometimes appreciate the amazingness of our seasons. I can say that those years that when I was sitting at New Orleansville, I've mentioned this before, and the spring season, and the teachers get excited, and the teachers take everyone out so that we can listen to the differences in seasons, and so that we can learn on what us differences in season means. And I can remember when we go out and when we had our sports days outside in the school, and the seasons change, the excitement that we as children sometimes had, right? And that our household circumstances were different, because some of us grew up in houses that were not so advantaged, right? That we were not so privileged to have everything that the other house had. And then we were all sitting outside, and everyone opens their lunch boxes, and there Ribea has to open a lunch box, and Ribea almost has nothing in the lunch box, or Ribea almost sometimes doesn't have, because Papa was deceased. Ribea is young in primary school. Mama Anna is having to find a job those years, and Mama Anna sometimes comes home, and there's enough to eat in the evening, but Ribea sometimes only have butter on the bread or peanut butter on the bread, and someone else has opened their lunch box, and there comes the sandwich ham, and the sandwich ham taste and smell is all over the place, and the blossominess of the vineyard is there. And the next to our New Orleansville Primary School was the vineyard, and my brother Anton, in the mornings before school starts, he runs to the vineyard. He runs to go and fetch grapes for his sister, because when everyone opens their lunch box in the springtime, then his sister is gonna have some grapes on the table, and that while people are sitting around the table, And while they are enjoying the sandwich ham, Brother Anton jumped over the vineyard. He went into the boer's farm and he goes and he fetches those grapes for his sister. And he runs back and the teacher shouts, "Where's Brother Anton? Why is he not in school? Why is he not in classroom?" And no one realizes that this brother is now not gonna have his sister just sit there without something to eat while everyone opens their lunch boxes. And Brother Anton runs back to the school and the boer shoots the gun. Guak, 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 guak. And everyone shouts in school, "Where's Brother Anton Ribea? The boy is shooting the children in his vineyard again." And then Brother Anton comes out of the vineyard, fine, with a bag of grapes for his sister once again. And he did that season after season. And the boy never catched him. I remember asking him in 2020, "What's the vineyard story?" Because I appreciated it and I could never forget the education my brother educated me. And I remember coming back that in 2020 when I traveled to South Africa and my brother was there and I said, "What's the vineyard story? How did you ever get over those gunshots that went off and how paranoid I always was?" But I was excited for the bag of grapes that you always came with because there was always something for us to appreciate, right? The vineyard, the grapes was always tasty. And because he knew his sister appreciates the seasons, how much more will a sister not appreciate those grapes and those vineyard in the vineyard, right? How much more will she appreciate the wine in a season that sometimes the wine are tasting bitter, sometimes the wine are disgusting, but the grapes is what she remembers in a season. And the way her brother ran, her brother was not scared of anything but to provide also for his sister in season and to make sure that his sister is fine in season. And I will never forget that education. And I will never forget how he ran out and how he ran to me. And after school, he went in again and he went to go. And we're still waiting for Brother Anton. And I said, "Brother Anton, we have moved from Chicago to Groenewald. Where are you at?" And then I don't know. And I'm asking all the children, "Where's my brother at? And what's happening with my brother?" And they say, "No, your brother is again in the vineyard. Your brother say you must wait for him by the other gate because he's honestly going to again bring grapes for you." And I remember he reminded me of the seasons that changed. God bless him. And man, he's in South Africa. And he said that, "You know what? We always monitored when the boer went out on a Friday. He went out on a certain time and he came back at a certain time. And when we go to fetch those grapes sometimes, we had to exactly monitor his timing. And then he goes to the bank to go and bank all those finances. And my sister don't have bread. And you're banking finances and you are the vineyard next to the school. And did you ever bring us a bag of grapes?" And we can't remember that. However, the boer brought us grapes to the school. And we were next to the school. And the brother said that, "You know what?" And then every Friday we would check where the boy is and when the boy leaves the farm. And then we run in and then we get those grapes for y'all. And I really said, I really appreciate that. And still, when I was in 2020 in South Africa, he brought me a bag of grapes. And once again, he's still in his grape story and his grapes education that I've mentioned on Saturday, yes, with the breakfast morning, that when the snake comes through, is in the vineyard, right? And the snake is poisonous, and the snake knows exactly our every reaction. And the protective environment in our season is that the poisonousness of the snake is that the snake is nature itself, but the quietness of the presence of where we find ourselves as being human beings and the choices we make on a daily basis is when Ribea Elise was there by the snake was very calm and quiet and it didn't move for Ribea Elise. And when someone else comes and the auntie was there and Ribea Elise didn't even notice the snake, and it happened numerous times in the vineyard, and the auntie came. And the auntie also worked at the same place in the vineyard where Ribea Elise was just now working, because in secondary school I was working and in the vineyard when I was in school vacation and school holidays, right? And while I'm working in the vineyard and while the auntie is standing and it's quiet in the vineyard and I'm working the grapes and nothing is wrong and I work quietly and silently, and then sometimes the aunties came and the aunties work on the same place and the aunties makes a loud noise and the aunties say, "Woo, the seasons, yes, the Kosa aunties," and they sound loud and the snake come for them. And I say sometimes the quietness of how we deal with our situations and our reactions as human beings and the quietness of everything in the universe is even even the presence of the snake, the presence of the universe that speaks to the snake and that tells the snake that one is a bit aggressive and this one is sometimes calm as a person. I always say that calmness is not being quiet. Calmness is our every reaction that is monitored in this universe, and even the snake in the vineyard knew about everyone's reactions when we are working those grapes in the vineyards. Therefore, how we appreciate the protective environment of our generation with our relationships and with the challenges that South Africa has had with relationship abuses is how we are therefore finding ourselves. Let me just fix this quickly. Is how we therefore find ourselves with that is our generation's requirement to be making choices that are fine for us. And when we learn that our relationships are loud, and loudness is not necessarily sometimes loud in voice, but sometimes loud in reaction. Loudness in season is not necessarily a loud wind that comes. It is that the softness of the spring and the visibility of the flowers sometimes. It is that you sense the hotness of the sun sometimes. It is that you listen to the season that is going to change. And some people say that I knew and I could sense within myself that it's raining outside. It is that how we listen in the loudness of a season is where we find ourselves at in the protective environment of a generation that has got yet so much to say, but yet we are experiencing so much. And when we are experiencing and educating so much, I always say that you don't tell Ribea Elise that is now there in a vote business and that she can now know not to say this. So that I say that when you are employed in television, and you are employed in radio, and you are a presenter, and you listen to Ribea Elise, and you don't disregard and disrespect Ribea Elise, who is now sitting there and having a relationship talk while the world is at war. You educate yourself that where you find yourself at and where you can educate or where you can employ Ribea Elise at sitting and having a relationship talk is where our generation finds themselves at, and how we listen to the loudness of a season. It is that when I have my discussions on people of color, when I complain about the challenges that people sometimes put our households through, when I complain about that, or when I have my people of color discussions or leading this generation, my advice and opinion are never disregarded because of what I have just posted on my social page. But my advice of opinion is that is when a little baby is in danger, are you gonna allow the baby to trip, or are you gonna say that Ribea Elise's opinion is an opinion that provides for protective environment, that even if Ribea Elise stands today in this season of where she speaks while there's war in another country and while Al Jazeera is showing that the world is full of war, then Ribea Elise says if the television can listen to Ribea Elise sitting in a seat and complain, then why can't the television contact Ribea Elise to go and educate where it's required at? It is those choices that we make in our generation that has us find that is the protective environment that is allowed for everyone being birthed in our seasons, being part of amazing generations. That is what we want to say today, and where we want to have us be in our generation with listening to the seasons, the amazing vineyard, the way the education of the relationship of humanity completes that how we listen to, how we educate one another is how we react in when we are challenged with the differences of how we are sometimes required to react to the other. And therefore, that is what we want to say today with our relationship discussion. I know it's sometimes a lot that we have to say, but I also know it is sometimes, and we have learned that it is sometimes required for us to say what we are required to say rather than not saying what is necessary in our seasons. That is it with our discussion today with me, Ribea Elise. Listen to our recording, and really, if you can provide our opinion to where you are at and not disregard what we say, but listen to how it is that we explain what is required in this generation. Listen to our leading this generation discussions and really try and implement that, because we are on a journey there where we are not going to just leave leading this generation there. really we are gonna have a proper discussion on that this month. We had our people of color talk, yes, and we explained it in a different way, and we are still having our leading this generation discussion also this month, that we really are not gonna not continue to educate our generation and where they are required to be educated at. That is it with me, Ribea, Elise. Yes, have an amazing day further.